Welcome to today's virtual activity, Paint and Sip. My name is Abby and I'm going to be teaching you how to paint a wildflower scene that takes place here at Camp for All with our ropes course in the background. First, we're going to go ahead and go over what supplies you're going to need to paint along with us today. A canvas of any size. Today I will be using a 24 by 16 inch stretched canvas, various size paintbrushes. I got a variety pack at Walmart that works great for this. A palette or plate to mix your colors on, your paints. Remember, you can use any colors you would like to paint today's scene. Feel free to mix it up and make this painting your own. I will be using white, yellows, oranges, reds, blues, purples, greens, and black. You will need a water cup and an old towel or paper towel to clean your brushes when changing colors. Lastly, you'll need a beverage. Today, I will be enjoying water as it's a nice warm day here at camp and I need to stay hydrated. Now that we have all of our supplies ready, let's go ahead and get sipping and painting. Okay, so to start off, we have our blank canvas and we are going to mix together some blues and some whites. So I did light blue, a little bit of dark blue, and some white. And the sky is never really a consistent color, so it's not super important what you get this color. And you're gonna take your brush, and it can be pretty loaded with paint, and you're gonna start in one of your corners and just kind of make crosses like this, and you're gonna go across and you're gonna paint about the top third of this painting with these blues. As we get lower down on the canvas, I'm gonna add a little bit more white to my brush and start putting that in so the colors just get a little bit lighter. So there we have our nice sky here at camp. And the next part we're gonna do is we're gonna get a little bit of yellow. We really don't need much. And a pinch of green. Add some white to that yellow and green. You can probably use your same brush here so it has a little bit of blue on it. That's totally okay. And we're gonna mix these together to get a nice, really light green. We don't want it to be too dark at all. Something like this for you guys. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna come in here and we're gonna just paint right in between this blue here in our bottom of our canvas, a nice light green. And again, you can see some of that blues coming through on my brush still. That is totally okay. So we're just gonna get a nice little middle part here, kind of blending those blues and greens together. And this is gonna be the start of our grass here. I'm gonna go a little higher on the corners. All right, so then down for the bottom part of our grass, we wanna make it a nice dark green. So I'm gonna use some green and one of the dark blues and mix those together. You don't need much of the blue. Again, this is grass, so we want it to be predominantly green. But that blue is gonna give it a nice dark color, which is what we want for our base. So once you have that loaded up on your brush, for this part, we're gonna be painting up and down in strokes like this because our grass is gonna be heading in that direction, and we wanna make sure that our paint underneath goes along with that grass. Go through and just kind of blend these together here and make my dark green go a little bit higher on the edges, just like we did with our light greens there. Okay, so now that we have this all done, we are gonna go back in, and while our paint up top is still a little bit wet, we're gonna go ahead and add some clouds so that our white blends with that blue nicely. So we're gonna take a little bit of a smaller brush like this. It just needs to be a little bit damp. That will kind of help thin out the acrylic paint a little bit. And you are gonna put just a tiny bit of white on your brush. You can barely see that it's on my brush there, and that's exactly what we're looking for. So you're gonna take a tiny bit of white, and you are gonna go ahead and go in and just start tapping. And you can see that even though you didn't have very much white on that brush, it really sticks to this canvas. So we're gonna just tap our clouds. You wanna start at the top, so the part of the cloud that's darkest is white. And we're just gonna kind of tap down and add our clouds like this. Now remember, clouds are all different shapes, so we don't have to worry too much about making it perfectly round or consistent or anything like that. You can see I got a lot more white on my brush that time, and it makes a really nice big cloud. So if you accidentally get too much, that's okay. Maybe make your cloud a little bit bigger. And if you keep tapping, it is going to blend with those blues that you laid down for your sky. So I like those clouds for mine. I'm not going to do any more. But you can see, like I said, how if you have very little paint, they're going to be nice and quiet behind, and a little bit more paint, they're going to stand out boldly. So you can do a couple of each if you want. Oh, and I see I left a little bit of the canvas white up there, so I'll just go back in with that blue from earlier. You can always go back in and add more. If you're trying to get your colors to blend, once they dry, it won't work really well, but if you still just need to cover up some of that white canvas that's showing through, feel free to take your colors and go back over if you want. Awesome. Okay, so now that we have our clouds added in, we're gonna go ahead and add our ropes course. If you don't want to put the ropes course in it, you don't need to, and it's not gonna be super detailed. We're just gonna kind of have the outlines of our ropes course here at Camp for All in the background. Because I know a lot of y'all are missing camp right now. So it's just a little bit of a reminder that we're missing you too. So for this, I'm going to use black and brown. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get just a very little bit of paint on this nice thin brush here. And I'm gonna start, so there are 5 posts here at Camp for All. So I'm gonna kind of lay it out in my mind, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm gonna start a little less than halfway over, and it can go into the grass here. It'll get covered up at the bottom with our blades of grass that we're gonna go add in a minute. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna bring up this line. And again, you can see the paint kind of faded. That's okay, we can go back in and add it. You wanna do one continuous motion, because if you stop, your lines might get a little bit jerky. Is our 5th one. So we just have our post right now. I'm gonna go back in and add the tops of all of these elements, and I'm gonna do them at a little bit of an angle here. And this is okay if it's a little bit thicker. So if you notice that one of your lines is lower, just go ahead and raise that right one up a bit. So now that we have our platforms on top there, I know that at the ropes course, we have a couple elements in the middle of these posts as well. I'm not gonna be super detailed in this picture today. If you want to be, that's great. But I'm just gonna add a couple lines in between here as well. Now, so we're gonna get a very small amount, even less than we were using before on our brush here. And we are going to connect our elements together by drawing a little cable like that. So again, the thinner you can get this part, the better. Really don't need a lot of paint. I'm gonna kind of have it droop in the center because those are gonna be our cables. We'll connect our bottom ones here. That was a little thick, that's okay. Okay, as you can see, I accidentally touched some of my brown paint there. and let it get in blue. So we're just gonna take our brush and cover that up again. Covered up our clouds a bit, so we're gonna go back in. And you can do all of this touch up later if you want. And I'm gonna just go back in and add to our cloud there. There we go, perfect. So it's really easy to fix if you made a mistake in your painting, so don't worry about it at all. All right, so now that we have our nice base and our ropes course up top, we're gonna go ahead and go back in and add our blades of grass. And this part, it's really important that you take your time and be super detailed. So let's go ahead and mix some different greens. As you guys know, grasses are not all the same color, and it's really important that we show that in our painting today. The more detail, the better. So we're gonna start with some greens. Again, a light and a dark green, some whites. You can even add some yellow or blues in there to make different shades. It's gonna be totally up to you guys, but we're gonna want quite a few different colors of grass. Okay, so for this, you're gonna need a brush that has a little bit of an angle on it like this. If you don't have one, just a regular round tip brush like this works great as well. So once you have your colors, it doesn't matter exactly what you start with. We're gonna start with a nice dark green here. So we're gonna get some on our brush, and the way that we're gonna do blades of grass is we're gonna start at the bottom and we're gonna push down a little bit harder, and then at the top we'll lift up to make a nice thin line. And we're just gonna do that all over our canvas here. And now we don't need to worry about exactly where the grass goes, because we're gonna be adding in a lot of grass. So this is just our first color. So just go ahead and kind of add them in wherever you see fit. Bring them up high. You don't have to start them all down at the bottom. You can start some up higher, but we do want to remember that grass doesn't always go straight. So make sure you're making some blades go off to the side and in every direction, because that's going to be important in this painting. So you can see as you add more colors, the blades of grass become more obvious, and you can start to see the details and the layers, and that's exactly what we're looking for. If you ever look at a field of grass, you're gonna see lots of different blades, lots of different colors, and we wanna replicate that here. If we stop right now, it's not gonna look as real as it will if we keep going. So we wanna add a lot of depth, which happens when we add a lot of layers. So this is kind of a tedious process, but we want to keep going. I want to get some nice thin blades up at the top here. So take a good look at your painting, find out if you like some of the gaps that are in there, or if you don't, go back in, lay some blades of grass over. I'm feeling pretty good about this. I think it looks nice. I think we got a lot of grass going in different directions. You can see the distinct blades, which I like. All right, so now we are gonna go in and start adding some of our flowers. So for this part, feel free to choose any color you want. I'm gonna do some colors that I like for flowers, and again, this is where you can have the freedom to do whatever you want with it. So to start, we are gonna get a really, really, really light green. So go ahead and use quite a bit of white and just a touch of green. And this is going to be the stem of one of our flowers. When we want it to be such a light green, because we already have so many greens on here, we want this to kind of stand out a little bit so we can really tell what this is a part of. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make some nice big flowers here. So I'm gonna take my thin brush again and take a green, and we're gonna stroke up like that. And now you can see this really stands out in this grass, and that is totally okay. So then what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our brush and we're gonna add some petals on either side, and we're just gonna touch our brush down like this, all the way down. And we're just adding these distinct petals in. Doesn't need to be perfect. If you pick up some other colors along the way, that's totally fine. So we're gonna add a few of these throughout our painting. They don't need to go all the way up to the top. I'm gonna add a small guy right here. So go ahead and add as many as you want. One thing to note is when you're doing paintings, especially with flowers like this, try and keep the flowers at odd numbers. So rather than only doing 2 like this, we're gonna do 3, 5, 7. We're gonna do an odd number, but I'm gonna go ahead and do some of this and add them in where I like them. Okay, so now that we have those in, I'm a big fan of Texas bluebonnets. So this is just our greenery right here. I'm gonna go back in, and it's okay if you wanna use almost that same exact color you did for the sky, but you can kind of mix it up. You can leave some of that green on your brush, doesn't really matter. And I'm gonna go back in and almost cover up those green petals on about the top half of these here. So we're gonna go in, and I'm gonna do that same kind of motion like this to make it look like a little bluebonnet. Perfect. Okay, so again, these don't have to look super consistent. You can make them however you want. If you really love bluebonnets, go ahead and do a whole field of bluebonnets. I'm gonna go ahead and add in some other flowers though. Okay, and so one other thing that we're gonna do to kind of add some depth to our painting is we have some bluebonnets in here now. And what I wanna do is just take my brush. I don't need a lot of paint, so I'm gonna take quite a lot of it off. So there's just a little bit left on there. And I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna kind of find 2 blades of grass where there's nothing in between, and I'm just gonna put a little bit of blue in there. And all this is gonna do is kind of add some depth to our painting so that when we see it later, once it's finished, it's gonna look like there are some flowers even farther back in the painting, but they don't need to be really detailed. And you don't wanna put these right on top of a blade of grass because that's gonna look a little bit goofy once we're finished. So try and go in and find where 2 blades of grass aren't really touching, and go ahead and throw in some blue. You don't need to add a lot, and just a light touch with your brush. But again, this is just gonna add some depth to our painting when we're done. So I'm gonna just add a few of those. Now, for the next painting that the next flower that I'm gonna do, I'm gonna use some yellows. So I'm gonna get a nice bright yellow, and I may add a little bit of white to it. But if you want to leave it the full yellow, go right ahead. Okay, so for these, I'm almost going to paint these like a star. So you find out where you want these to go. I might do one kind of right at the base of our ropes course here. And you're just going to kind of take your brush and you're going to add these petals in like that. So go ahead and find where you want these to be, and we're just gonna do this part right here. We're gonna go in and add some colors on top later, but for now they're just gonna be like yellow starbursts. Okay, so that's okay. I accidentally just dropped my brush on our painting here. So when things like that happen, we're just gonna kind of go with the flow. I guess there's gonna be a yellow flower here now. So we're gonna just make this into a flower. And that's okay. Look at that, we covered up our mistake. No one would ever know. When you add this first coat of yellow, it's gonna be really washed out. So that's okay. We'll go ahead and go back in afterwards and add another coat on top. And like I said, we're gonna continue to add some more colors on top. So don't worry that it's not super yellow when you're first doing this. So I don't think I wanna add any more than that. So we're gonna leave those right there. Because we have our yellow, I'm gonna go ahead and add some more flowers in. So these are gonna be kind of sunflower-like. So I'm gonna use this same really bright yellow, but I'm gonna do the petals a little bit differently. So this was kind of like a starburst. What I'm gonna do with these is make them a little more rounded at the ends. So what I want to do is I'm going to push down on my brush and then lift it up as I pull into the center. So we're gonna start like this and kind of lift up, and it's gonna give us a nice round petal. And now we're gonna leave the centers a little bit open because we'll go back in later and fill those in. But you're just gonna do this all around. You might need to rotate your canvas. I'm not gonna do it so it stays in the camera line okay for you guys. But you might need to rotate your canvas in order to get it, that one's a little bit oval shape and that's okay. So we're gonna do a couple of these. And you wanna remember, when you're looking at a field of wildflowers, not all of the flowers look directly at you. So all of these right now, their faces are looking directly at us. So what we can do is we can go back in and we can add a few of these yellow guys like this. So that way we can kind of see it's only half the flower. They're looking straight up at the sky. They're not looking at our painting. So let's go ahead and add a few of those in while I'm thinking about it. And again, you don't need to add many. However many you want is great. So we'll add those. And the way to do that on these guys here is we're just gonna do about half the petals. So we're gonna come in, let's see, I wanna leave room. We got a lot of yellow flowers right now, and that's okay. But I wanna leave room for some other stuff. So we're only gonna do 3 of these guys. So I'm gonna do one more right up here, and this one is only gonna be a half flower. So what that means is I'm gonna do the same exact technique that I did before. I'm gonna touch down, and oops, that was kind of bad. Touch down and drag in. And that's all that I'm gonna do. I'm only gonna do these petals, so when I go back in later and add the top of it, the little center part of our flower, it looks like it's looking away from us. So I'm gonna add one more of these guys. Perfect, so now that we have some nice yellow flowers on there, we can see that these have dried a little bit more, our first starburst. So we're gonna go back in, and I'm just gonna do very carefully on top another coat of yellow. Perfect, and we'll go through and do that again to these once they're a little bit more dry, and we'll probably use an even brighter yellow. Okay, so now we are gonna do our next flower. Let's do almost like a daisy. So I'm gonna clean my brush, because I want some nice white flowers in here also. So for this, I'm just gonna use plain old white. And for this, kind of a combination of the 2 methods we just did before, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just pull my brush in and leave a nice open center. like that. So we don't need to focus too much on the shapes. We're not gonna pull them quite like that because these are gonna be a little bit different petals. We're just gonna go about adding in some daisies. All right, perfect. So we will go ahead and go back in a little bit and darken those up again, just like we did with our other flowers. We're pretty much gonna do that for every single flower we have on here. All right, let's add another flower. Let's see. Let's do like a nice reddish pink flower. We need some red in here. So for that, I'm gonna take red. Maybe I'll do a touch of white to lighten it up a bit. We can keep these guys pretty dark. And I'm gonna grab a little bit of a thinner brush than what I was just using because we're gonna make these guys nice and small. So for these, very similar to our first yellow flowers that we went in, we are just gonna do small reddish pink starbursts, and we are gonna make them pretty small, just like that. So go ahead and add in however many of these guys you want. So again, I'm not gonna do a whole lot of those. I just wanna add some nice color to our painting here. So now, let's see, these guys have dried pretty nicely. So I'm gonna go back in and add yellow. If you have a brighter yellow, go ahead and pull that out right now. If not, that's okay, but we're gonna do just a little bit of a brighter yellow to make them really stand out and pop. And we're just gonna go over the same exact brush strokes that we had before and just darken them up a little bit so less of that green shows through. So now that we've darkened those up a little bit, they look good. While we're in the middle of darkening things, let's just go ahead and go back over with our white on our daisies there. And we'll just get that taken care of. Make sure you clean your brush really well in between that yellow and that white if you're using the same brush, because that yellow will show through. And, we don't want that on our daisies here. So just go ahead and go over all of your white again. Now that we have that, let's go ahead and add, we're missing purple from our painting here. So let's go ahead and add in some purple flowers. So for this, I'm still gonna be using one of our round brushes, but I'm gonna use a little bit of a bigger one. Because these flowers, we're gonna make, yeah, we'll make them pretty big. Okay, so I'm gonna use some purple here. And very similar to the way that we went in and did our second version of a yellow flower. Oh, you know what I've been forgetting to do as we do this whole thing is go back in and add some of these little smudges for depth. I'm so sorry. Okay, so let's do that. So I have some white on my brush here. So I'm gonna just go in and find some in between blades and add a little bit of white. Okay, and then we'll do that same thing with our yellow. Again, you only want a little bit on the brush here. It doesn't need to be much. It's like that's too much. I'm just gonna kind of rub that out with my finger. And we'll find nice little areas. Okay, and then our last color that we didn't use, or didn't do this with, was red. So I'm gonna add, this is really dark, so you can take quite a bit of that paint off before you do it. And again, if you feel like you have too much, go ahead and kind of rub it out with your finger to blend it a little bit. Okay, So sorry about that. All right, now that we have that back on track here, we are gonna go in and add some pretty large purple flowers. So they're gonna look similar to this, and I'm gonna go ahead and cover up some of these blue bonnet bases that we did here before, and that's totally okay. But I realized we're already getting pretty crowded with flowers here, but I wanna make sure we get some purple in our painting. So we're gonna have our brush pretty full of purple paint, and we're gonna do a similar stroke. So we're gonna touch down and bring it in. And you can definitely tell when there's less paint on your brush, because your petals will start to become less distinct. So go ahead, and we're gonna make a few of these. So now that we've added our purple in, we are going to do, we're not going to forget this time. We're going to go back in, we'll tuck some purple in here. Again, try and get it between the blades so it looks a little more natural. Okay, perfect. So now we have done these little starburst flowers, but we're not quite done with them. We wanna add some orange to them. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get some orange, and you can use that same brush or a little bit of a thinner brush if you want. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna go back with some orange, and we're gonna make kind of an orange center. So we're not gonna go all the way to the tip of our petals. We're just gonna pull in like that. So you don't need a lot of orange on your brush. It's okay if some of that yellow peeks through. And we're gonna go through and add a nice orange center to all of these flowers. We're not going to go do it on these little half guys because those are just kind of pointing up. We're not seeing the inside of the petal. So now that we've done that, we are going to get a dark red, like a scarlet if you have it. And we're going to go in and we're going to add dark centers to these guys. So again, you can use that same brush. Go ahead and use a thinner brush if you have one. I'm going to use the same one though and just put a little bit of red on it, and I'm going to go in and just touch in a loose red center. So I'm not being super precise about it. Doesn't really matter where it goes, just blotching it in there. Don't need a whole lot of paint on your brush. All right, perfect. Oh, forgot one up here. Alrighty, so now we have those. What we are gonna do now is add the centers to some of our open flowers that need centers. So what we're gonna do for this is we're gonna get a nice brown and a very thin brush. So again, we can use that brush that we had used for our ropes course. That's gonna be like the perfect brush for this. So what we wanna do is we wanna get just a little bit of brown on our tip of our brush here, and we're gonna go in and we're gonna add the centers by just dotting. So we wanna make sure that we make our center cover all of the edge of the petals here. So we're gonna cover up everything in the middle here by just dotting on some brown. Now for this one, because this flower is opening facing us. We're just gonna do kind of a nice center like that. It doesn't really matter. But for one that's like this, because she's pointing kind of halfway towards us, what we're gonna do is we're still gonna come around and connect all those bottom ones, but we're gonna make a little bit of an oval kind of up in the sky like that. Because that way, you're only seeing half of the flower. Her center is kind of still exposed like that. So we're gonna go through and add it just to our other one here that we have. Perfect, so we've added that. These purple ones are gonna get the same kind of center, but we're gonna wait for a little bit because I'm gonna go back through and add some different colors to those in just a minute. But while we have some of this brown on our thin brush, what we're gonna do is we're gonna get a little bit and we're gonna go around kind of that outside red ring on these flowers and just put some brown in. It doesn't have to be super precise, but we're gonna add a little bit of brown to the center here to kind of darken it up a bit. Beautiful. So you can see these flowers are really coming along nicely now, and they're starting to get some more of that depth that we were looking for before. All right. Now, let's let these purples dry a little bit more. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take our yellow that we've been using and we're gonna go and just add the centers to these little red starburst guys. So just a little dot of yellow in the middle of each of these, just like that. Nothing too fancy, but now they have a little center. Perfect. All right, so now we're gonna lighten up our purple. So what we're gonna do for that is we're gonna use that purple that we had and we're gonna add a little bit of white and a little bit of blue, which I know kind of sounds strange, but you just need the tiniest bit of blue. Okay, so now we have a nice light purple on our brush here. We're gonna go through and we're gonna add that to this guy. And we don't need to add a lot. In fact, you kind of want to see that purple. So I'm not even gonna put more paint on my brush, and I'm just gonna come over here and do this one. So you wanna see, there's still quite a bit of paint on those, so we'll add a little bit more here, but you wanna just add a nice small amount of color to these petals here. We're just lightening them up, giving them a little bit more color. Okay, those look good. All right, so now that we have that, if you want, you can kind of take some of that dark purple and come back in right at the base here and pull up. So we're kind of going the opposite direction. And this is just the original purple that we used on those flowers. We can add a little bit to the center and kind of pull out like that. And just really blend that light and that dark together to give it a nice vivid center. So I'm gonna do that on these here. You don't have to. Again, this painting is whatever you want it to be. So if you don't like the colors or something that I'm doing, don't do it on yours. Go ahead and change up that color, change up what you're doing. If you think this is too many flowers, go ahead and stop. Not enough, add more. Wonderful, so those purple guys look good to me. So now that we did that, we can go in and add our centers. If you want to wait for it to dry a little bit, you can. But what I'm going to do is, again, we're going to go through and same way we did the purple, or I'm sorry, the yellow ones, we're just going to dab on some brown right in the center. dots and not just kind of circle it is because then it adds the texture that you see on flowers. So that's helpful. Okay, so those are those centers. Now for the daisy centers, we're just gonna take any sort of brush, doesn't really matter. And we're gonna add some yellow to our brush, and we're just gonna kind of fill in these centers. Nothing too crazy. These are a little bit square, so I might try and kind of round them out. But those are our daisies. Wow, it is looking really, really great, y'all. All right, so now that we've done that, I'm gonna go back in and I'm going to pick, let's see, I wanna do a nice pink. So to kind of finish this off, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use one of my smaller brushes, and I'm going to make a nice light pink. So lots of white, very little red. Okay, so this is just gonna be kind of like our filler flower. So this is just gonna be put in wherever you think we need to have some more pop of color. So if you don't wanna add any of these in and you really like how your painting looks right now, go ahead and stop. But similar to kind of the way that these blue bonnets are shaped here, I am going to find a blade of grass that I think needs a little extra, and I'm gonna go in and add these tiny red flowers, kind of similar to a blue bonnet. So I see there's a blade of grass here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just take these small brush strokes like that, and we're gonna kind of tuck these in throughout our painting. You can do as many as you want, or again, not add these if you don't want them, but I kind of like, I like a lot of colors in my paintings, and we don't have any bright pink right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and add these in, just a few right around where I think we need some color. Okay, so I like that. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back in with a little bit of a dark red and kind of add some texture and color to it. But again, like always, you don't have to if you don't want to. Well, everybody, I think it looks wonderful. I think I'm gonna stop there. Sometimes when I paint, I start to get really nitpicky and keep going. And I think that right now it looks really good and I don't wanna overdo it. So with that said, the last part of every painting is signing your name. So for this, you can use whatever color you want. I'm going to use black because I think it shows up really nicely. And I'm gonna get a really thin brush, probably that one that I used for the ropes course. And I'm gonna just go in at the very bottom corner here. Wonderful. Okay, everybody, that should do it. Thank you all so much for joining me today in painting this beautiful scene here at Camp for All. I hope you had as much fun as I did, and if you painted along with me, please take a picture and put it in the comments so I can see your masterpiece. See you soon.